Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. And continuing my seems like really long trek through all of the Coen brothers' filmography, and we only have a few left. And I just realized, I was sitting watching Inside Llewyn Davis last night. I'm like, this is the last great one.
No, yeah.
And then I'm like, it's 2021. This movie came out in 2013. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But this week have special guest Robert here. So I'm going to let Robert introduce himself and tell you all about some of the things that he does film related.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Shane. I liked being on here the first time. I know it was a different series, but yeah, I'm a blogger. I write lots of movie reviews, I like to think thoughtful pieces on different movies and TV shows. I edit at SiftPop, read lots of your stuff because of it. And I will be starting YouTube very soon as well. So this isn't the last you'll see of me on this platform.
Awesome. Well, you'll get a subscriber.
Great. Thank you
right
so
off
much.
the bat. So I'll definitely be checking in. And Robert's going to be reading something from me this weekend on New Order, which I watched. I had emailed Neon weeks ago, and I think they got back to me. They're not going to be doing screeners. I'm like, oh, well, I guess once I go back to the movies, I'll check this out. And then I randomly got an email yesterday. Here's a screener. I'm like,
okay.
Wait, what? Mm-hmm. Okay. I know what I'm doing tonight. So after watching Inside Llewyn Davis and watching some Workaholics, I hopped in and watched something that will emotionally devastate you. So
great.
Look forward to watching. Look forward to reading my review.
All right.
Oh, man. But that's not what we're talking about today, but we're going to be shifting gears into our first segment, which is coming attractions. So Robert, for the weekend of May 28th, what are you most excited to be seeing?
So there's two big things coming out, A Quiet Place 2 and Cruella. And I think once I saw it, I just saw an ad on TV or on YouTube or something that said Cruella's rated PG-13. So that put it over the top for me. It gave me a little bit more hope that maybe they'll get into some interesting stuff thematically. So that's why I'm more higher anticipating Cruella over Quiet Place. And Emma Stone and Emma Thompson. It's just all seems very interesting to me, and doesn't seem like a shot-for-shot remake of anything. Seems like it'll be interesting enough.
What's interesting is I remember when they announced this, and I'm like, who cares?
Right.
Honestly, that was my first reaction. And then I saw that they cast Emma Stone, and I remember they released that first picture of her. I'm like, it's bold.
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty cool. And then more things have been coming out. The first trailer dropped. I'm like, this looks interesting. And from what I understand, this is from the same director, Tanya, which I was like,
oh, yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe I am more interested in this. And I've been seeing all the social media responses to it. I'm like, now I actually am pretty excited to watch this movie at this point.
Yeah, it's getting legitimately good buzz, and I'm not awards buzz, but just solid movie buzz, and I'm excited to watch it.
Which honestly, at this point this year, besides all the things that trickled in at the beginning of 2021 because of the Academy Awards, since then we haven't had any big great movies or exciting movies. So I'm like, I'm down to have this and A Quiet Place Part 2 coming out this coming weekend. So I'm excited about it. I remember looking it up and I'm like, this is 2 hours and 17 minutes. I looked up the runtime for Cruella. I'm like, well, I'm going to get my $30 money's worth because I'm going to be watching on Disney Plus. So for me, I have been one of those people who have been paying the $30 for those movies that have been coming out, and then telling my brother, my girlfriend's mom, and whoever has access to my Disney Plus, you better watch this.
Please watch it.
I want to get my money's worth, which my brother has been very good about it, because
that's good.
To be honest, when I rent something at home, I'm usually renting for two people, because my wonderful significant other, Jess, will literally watch basically anything with me. So,
hey, can't complain about that.
So I'll be checking that out, and I'm actually really excited about it now. One when I was putting the notes together before all the social media buzz was coming out, I'm like, oh, I'm 100% more excited for A Quiet Place Part 2, which is also getting some really good reviews.
Yep.
I know the tomato meter at this point is 91%.
Wow, I didn't even look at that yet.
Which, take that for whatever grain of salt you want and how much you trust Rotten Tomatoes aggregate scores and stuff like that. But at least the social media reactions I've been seeing too have been pretty excited that it's building on the world of A Quiet Place. And I'm not like, if I had to pick my favorite genre, it would nowhere near be close to being horror movie. So like, it has to be really good for me to appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved A Quiet Place, the first one. And when I heard that they were making a sequel, I'm like, of course they're making a sequel, because why wouldn't they? This made a bunch of money.
A horror movie, right?
Yeah, but like, I'm like, how excited am I going to be about this? And then when they dropped that trailer last year, I'm like, yes, I am going to be excited about this. And so I know I'm excited to be checking that out. And now I'm really excited about Cruella too.
Yeah, it should be a good weekend next week, or this weekend when this episode drops. But yeah.
I'm pretty open when, honestly, I'm pretty open on here. I'm like, I don't record this the day that this comes out. So y'all know this is like a week in advance. So it's going to be coming. And it's going to be a fun weekend. Yeah. Because honestly, this weekend, it's just like most people who really wanted to see Army of the Dead went out and saw it in theaters. And then the rest of us who were like, I could wait a week to check this out on Netflix. And that's what I'll be doing later. So it sounds like we have some good movies coming our way out in theaters, and which A Quiet Place Part 2 is 100% just in theaters, except they have a shortened window because that's a Paramount.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so, it's going to go to Paramount.
I guess in 45 days, it's going to pop up on my Paramount Plus account, which at least will give it something to watch. Because, like, honestly, it's pretty crappy at this point. I'm like, I joined because, like, I really liked The Twilight Zone. I enjoyed watching that on CBS All Access. Not going to lie, I just stopped my account when it ended. And then I tried out Clarice, not liking it. So that wasn't really worth it either. And then they came out with the SpongeBob stuff right at the beginning. And then
you're a big SpongeBob fan?
Like, it's funny. I was never a SpongeBob fan when I was a kid. Honestly, what's been getting me into it is the movies. I think they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I watch them, and then I'm like, literally the only thing I have to watch. Because, like, I would love to watch Picard. I have never watched a single episode of Next Generation. So I'm like, am I going to be lost here? But, you know, it is what it is. But
that's my hesitation with Star Trek too, is that there's so much.
There's like, oh my God, because I put it on my spreadsheet of like shows to watch, and I looked up how many episodes it was. I'm like, it's gonna take me forever. And I'm like, is it worth it? I don't know, kind of thing. But at least we have some great movies coming our way. At least it looks like.
For sure.
I'm excited. Now, time to shift gears into why we're really here for this episode is to talk about Inside Llewyn Davis, which this is a 2013 Coen Brothers film, obviously written and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. Surprisingly, though, one, there's no score to this movie. So Carter Burwell was not involved in this movie. And two, there's no Roger Deakins on this movie.
Yeah.
So for all those out there who enjoy me just talking about Roger Deakins over and over and over again every week, no Deakins to talk about this week, which is interesting because you could take one look at it and realize this wasn't Roger Deakins. But we'll get to that. But so this film focuses on a folk singer, basically a week in his life of somebody who's not particularly likable. Most people aren't the hugest fan of Llewyn. And he's just kind of going from couch to couch, from trying to find gig to gig and trying to figure his life out, all surrounded by a lot of folk music. But Robert, so obviously I've been asking people around, and I had brought this up, and you're like, I definitely want to be here for Inside Llewyn Davis. So why did you want to be here for Inside Llewyn Davis?
So when did you say this came out? 2013, right? I think I saw it maybe 2017 or 2018-ish. And the first time I ever saw it, it was like the perfect time in my life because I related to the character of Llewyn, of just like the cyclical, what are you doing, trying to figure out some sort of direction. So I was floored the first time I watched it. I was like, man, I got to watch more Coens. I got to watch more Oscar Isaac. And I have, and I've seen most of the Coen movies at this point. But I never got to watch it again since then until last night for this recording. But I've been looking for a good reason other than just sitting down to watch it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not as busy as you, but I have to be intentional with the movies I watch.
Very true.
So I was glad to have a reason to watch it. And man, it's not perfect, but it still holds up really, really well for me. I think other than the John Goodman section, I think it's pretty close to perfect because that's where it kind of loses me a bit. But other than that, it's still just as good as I remember.
It's so funny because I was sitting watching this with Jess last night and she just turned to me. She's a huge Coen Brothers fan too. And she just turns to me and it's like, why did I forget John Goodman was in this movie? I'm like, probably because it's the strangest part of this movie.
Yeah.
And like, obviously all of you who have been tuning into this show know that we spoil everything. So there's no holding back here, but like that whole section of him driving to Chicago, which John Goodman's character is so weird. Yes. And I love John Goodman. He's one of my favorite actors, honestly. And he definitely plays it well, but it's such a weird, like, it feels like such a weird tangent. And I think it feels like one of those moments where they were really trying to make a Coen Brothers-y character.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing because where I see Inside Llewyn Davis is in the same breath as like A Serious Man.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember seeing both of them for the first time and like, I love the Coen Brothers. I love this, but like, this isn't like one of my favorites. But every time I watch them again, it kind of just reinforces them like, this is so well done. And these are those two are the kinds of films that you kind of need to take it in a little bit longer because a lot of their other films, there's so much fun around them or such shocking moments, like big moments that are memorable. This is more of like, you're going through the life of this man for a week. And between John Goodman's weird character and what Garrett Hedlund as this like barely speaking driver.
Yeah, that too.
Such a weird section of the film, but I love where it goes because I love F. Murray Abraham, and that tryout that he has with him is heartbreaking. Like, I remember watching that last night and just sitting there like, oh, just rips your heart out that you could tell Llewyn put everything on the floor there. And how dry Abraham is, just like, I don't see money in this. And just like, wow, just killed it dead right on the spot.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of what I thought the cat meant watching this movie, because this movie, I feel like, has so many different ways you can interpret it, depending on like where the viewer is personally in their own life and all that kind of stuff. You can relate to different things. So I was watching a lot of different videos on that, like on the movie, just to see what other people were thinking about it. And one of them was about the meaning of the cat. And this person was talking about how Llewyn, like, he left the cat in the car and then went the rest of the way to Chicago. He's like finally leaving that part of himself behind, whether maybe it represents his old partner, whether it represents some certain part of himself. And it's this thing that's been holding him back the whole movie up till this point. And then when he's finally at this audition with F. Murray Abraham, and he's, like you said, bearing his soul, leaving it all on the floor. And then it's just like, there's not much money here. It is completely devastating. You know, it's like, where you're finally rooting for him. Like, I always root for the animals in a movie, but you understand why he leaves the cat because you want to root for the character. Even like you mentioned, he's somewhat unlikable. Um, but like I said, once you get to that point and he's just like hard and fast rejected, it's like, I'm sorry, we can't do anything. It's just like, man, this isn't going to be like a happy ending or anything like that. And I'm glad you compared it to A Serious Man, because I feel like the Coens have three speeds. They have like that, the serious, like Fargo. Even though Fargo is really funny, it's still like serious, kind of like that, and No Country for Old Men or Blood Simple. And then they have like the zany, silly but still meaningful Oh Brother, Big Lebowski, that sort of stuff. And then they have this sort of hybrid here with Llewyn Davis and A Serious Man. Like, I forgot how funny this movie is. It's like got very dry moments, but I was laughing a lot more than I remembered I was going to. Especially at Adam Driver's singing during the Mr. Kennedy song. But like, yeah, exactly. But I love the tone that they go for here and A Serious Man. It just like, it shows their range and their versatility, and they're able to bring a lot more meaning to it, I think.
It's interesting because my favorite Coen Brothers film is The Big Lebowski. I love The Big Lebowski. I could put that on any day, any time, and just love every moment of it. Close second is No Country for Old Men. And as I've gotten older and watched their films again and again, three films have really started moving up my list, and it's Serious Man, it's Inside Llewyn Davis, and Barton Fink.
That's the one I haven't seen still. I got to see it.
I think Barton Fink was kind of that first step to them making these two kinds of films. Because I remember watching that and it being like, this feels very different because it's very introspective, because they had writer's block and they ran with it and wrote a script around it. And I think it has that very internally personal kind of feel to it, like A Serious Man does. I feel so bad for Michael Stuhlbarg's character in that movie. Like, the whole entire world is just shitting on him the whole entire movie. And
how many times does he say, what? In that movie, he's like, never knows what's going on.
Never. And just rewatching that a couple of weeks ago when he finds out about Saul Abelman, and he's just like, what? Because like everybody's so matter of fact about it, and he's just like, what's going on here? And Inside Llewyn Davis is like, Oscar Isaac. I remember watching this for the first time being like, that guy's amazing.
Yeah.
Love him as an actor. And obviously his career's gone in interesting places because he has films like A Most Violent Year where he really gets to show off how great of an actor he is. Having films like Ex Machina, I love him in that.
I love that
and
movie.
His dancing.
Yeah.
But like you also have Apocalypse, which that wasn't a good position for any actor to be in. No. And he is so great in this film because he is such a jerk to everybody, but there's so much pain behind him that you can't help but feel bad for him.
Yeah. It comes from like this place of the struggling artist where he goes like, it seems like he feels like I've been working for so long, and he feels like he has legitimate talent. He feels like he's more legitimate than the army serviceman who he meets in the apartment, or even Justin Timberlake and Carey Mulligan. Like, they're the ones who are just kind of playing stuff that's gonna make money, but he's playing from the heart. This is how he feels. So he feels like the world just isn't giving him his dues, and it just causes him to act out and like yell at the woman, whatever their names are, I can't remember, but like they just genuinely wanted to hear his music, but he just has to act out because of his mindset.
That scene too, along with the rejection scene, scene where she starts singing along to his song and he just can't handle it. and coming to grips with the loss of his partner. Like, that was such a thing. And it's so interesting, especially coming from the Coen brothers, who are a successful independent filmmakers. Like, Coen brothers don't make a whole lot of big budgeted kinds of things. You look at No Country for Old Men, which is one of their bigger films. It's not like there's like giant set pieces in that movie.
Right,
It's
no.
like True Grit is probably like, and which is executive produced by Steven Spielberg, was like the only thing that feels like a big budgeted kind of thing up until this point. And it's so interesting them taking this story of the artist, because it's such a similar story to Barton Fink. So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts when you get around to watching that. But it's so interesting to hear that, because like most Coen brothers films don't kill it at the box office.
Right, yeah.
They're not huge successes in that way. They win a lot of awards and have a lot of critical acclaim, but Llewyn's like, that whole, I laugh so hard and love every moment of that scene with Justin Timberlake, Adam Driver, and him in that scene, because that song is so stupid, but it's so catchy, and you know that's going to be a hit.
Exactly.
And it pains me when he rushes out of there not to get the royalties. I'm like, dude. And it's just so interesting to have that perspective, because it's like the equivalent of, say, like a lot of young independent filmmakers, which before things like A24 gave them a voice and stuff like that, are kind of just trying to make their way. And then you have the Michael Bays of the world that are just like, I'm going to make $1 billion making Transformers movies that most people seem to hate. Then why does this make so much money? And you could obviously translate that across any form of art. And it seems like a very passionate story in this film coming from them.
Right. To you, does it seem like they're kind of, they're, as a unit, the two brothers, Joel and Ethan, does it seem like they're working through what it would be like to have to create individually? Because Llewyn Davis did have success. What was his partner's name? Mike?
I think Mike, yeah.
Yeah, when he had moderate success with him, and people knew their music that way, and he was trying to make it on his own, but it seemed like he kind of lost his artistic inspiration, at least until the scene with F. Murray Abraham. It seems like he was more fulfilled and more passionate about making his music and making his art when he had someone to do it with. So it seemed almost like a meditation on what it would be like to have to make art alone when you've been so successful and been so fulfilled making it with another person. Now I know who is it? Joel is going to go make Macbeth.
Yeah.
Finally without Ethan. But it's still interesting for me to think about, just like inherently it's a movie by two guys who always make movies together about someone who lost their creative partner.
And that's very interesting. I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. And it is interesting because Ethan's taking a break to do theater. And now Joel's going off and making Tragedy of Macbeth coming out this year on Apple TV Plus. I will be watching. One, I found out that they had like a hard release date, like a not hard release date, but like it's coming this year. I'm like, that skyrocketed to like the top of my most anticipated movies. I'm like, it's coming. But like, it's going to be interesting to see, because from what I understand, I've read a lot of books on the Coen brothers. It's interesting. I've never actually watched a whole lot of interviews directly from them.
There are that many.
I don't think so. And doesn't seem like they ever smile either. They're always just like, they're like the most serious people in the room. They are serious men. And what it sounds like is they sit in front of, they're typing the script out, and that's where the battles are. But the second they get on set, they're a unit. They're on the same page. They're going through it. So I am interested to see what happens with the Tragedy of Macbeth, and if that kind of, because like it wouldn't be like the same thing, because like if it comes out that it's not great, it's not like the Coen brothers haven't made not great movies together, Lady Killers.
Yep.
And so like it'll be interesting, but this film has so much to think about, and I love the music
Yeah.
and how they use the music in this film. And like I'm not the biggest folk music fan, nor was I a bluegrass fan, but you know, Coens know how to make the music work and you feel it. And it definitely spoke with all that folk music in this. And that last song that Llewyn plays at the end, you felt it.
Yeah. And maybe is this a good time to bring up just like the structure of the movie?
Yes.
Because the end is kind of also the beginning, but also they're different enough. And that's why, like I mentioned right at the beginning, that it's kind of like, it just is kind of metaphorical for the cyclical nature of his life, where he has all these opportunities, like you mentioned, turning down the royalties on the Mr. Kennedy song, or turning down becoming part of the trio with F. Murray Abraham, because he feels he has such a strong belief. Maybe it's thinking too highly of himself. Maybe it's like excessive pride, but he feels like he deserves to make it as a one-man show, and the world is kind of beating him down. You know, he's getting punched in the nose and saying that you're just gonna keep repeating the same cycle if you don't learn these lessons.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I got from it the first time, and then I got a lot more the second time. But that, I think, is the biggest thing that stands out to me still.
I definitely think and even with the cat, because like I feel like the cat kind of represents him,
Yeah.
because it somehow just keeps coming back and it's there. And I feel like him hitting the cat with the car and the cat still living and limping off into the woods, like, is him. He got hit by a car in that tryout, and he should have stayed down for all intents and purposes and just given in. But like, he's gonna keep on going. And it's so fascinating because you start the film with him getting punched out, and you have that feeling of him waking up the next morning. And after you've watched the film, realizing he wasn't waking up the next morning from that's actually where the story starts. And it gets to the point where, which, first off, that thing that he did to that lady was so terrible. And
you're like, he's definitely unlikable here.
yes, that was definitely one of those moments you're just like, ugh, I don't know how much I could keep rooting for you, dude. But when he's walking out and sees Bob Dylan sitting there about to perform, and I think that's so interesting because up to this point, it's very fictional.
Right.
And you're just like, because there could have very well have been a Llewyn Davis, somebody who's gone, there's like probably hundreds of people that have gone through journeys like that.
Yeah.
Or at least similar things. And then him walking by Bob Dylan and him just being like, us as an audience thinking, well, that's where this really blows up. Bob Dylan's going to be in that spot that Llewyn Davis wants.
Right.
And then he goes outside and gets decked in the face. And he's just going to keep going. And I imagine he's just going to keep being that starving artist moving forward. But
until he finally resolves either to, you know, do more than a solo act, like go on to the Justin Timberlake band or whatever the band was that F. Murray Abraham was creating.
Yeah.
Or just give it up altogether. You know, like renewing his union membership and going off to sail. Like, there's options, but he's very stubborn. So big disclaimer here, I don't speak French, but I looked into it a little bit, and apparently, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but au revoir, which he says at the end, instead of just goodbye, it can also translate into until I see you again, which is just another way to be like, it's just going to keep happening over and over and over. So yeah, it's a devastating movie in a lot of ways, like we've been talking about, but for some reason I just really love it.
I love it too. And this is definitely going to be one of those Coen Brothers movies that keeps growing on me. And like, there's some of them that the more I watch them, I'm like, I'm not excited to watch Lady Killers. And in general, I really love their films a lot. And it's going to be interesting because I have Hail Caesar and Buster Scruggs coming up. And I've only watched Buster Scruggs the once when I watched it on Netflix. And then I've seen Hail Caesar like once or twice since I saw it in theaters, which the funniest thing was that was the first ever Coen Brothers movie I've seen in theaters.
Oh, really?
And the only one, I guess, because Buster Scruggs was on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, which is so strange to think about. I'm like, Hail Caesar's the only one that I've actually got to experience in a theater. It's so silly. It's like that. It's definitely low end Coens, but like I still have fun with it because
I really do.
They vibe with me very well, and I think inside Llewyn Davis, every time I watch this, I'm going to feel like I get so much out of this.
Yeah.
So
I think the muted color palette and the cinematography, we haven't really talked about that either.
Yeah.
It also goes to like this very melancholy and just dour sense and tone for the entire movie. I really was trying to think of it. I don't know if I've seen another movie with as intentional of a muted color palette as this one has. Like it's all just like these boring grays and browns and like the rainy blue and that sort of thing. Like you don't really see any bright red or anything like that. It's just like, I don't know. It's just very intentional and very different than Deacon's.
Yeah.
Like it's not Oh Brother, or it's not No Country for Old Men.
Mm-hmm.
But it works perfectly again for this movie. Just the way they dress Oscar Isaac the whole time, how he just wears like these thin, like brownish, greenish jackets and all that. Yeah, it really works.
And it's interesting because like Deacon's is very sharp. Like everything's very striking with his cinematography and the shadows, the lighting. Like honestly, one of the most impressive Coen Brothers films to look at is The Man Who Wasn't There. And like it's black and white, and that like really accentuates the shadows and everything. It has that very somber kind of feel to it with the muted colors, and then that like there's a brightness about the lighting on everybody's faces, especially the paler people in the movie. Like you could really feel it on like Carey Mulligan, and like who also, she has a very thankless role in this movie.
She just
because
you're an asshole over and over, basically.
Yeah, because like basically her role here is to call Llewyn out on his shit the whole entire movie. And that's supposed to be our protagonist. So like naturally are we supposed to like appreciate her, but like to be honest, he kind of needs that in his life because everybody else is so nice to him and accommodating, except for John Goodman. But like everybody's like he just welcomes himself on the Adam Driver's couch, and his professor friend, no matter how badly he reacts, they bring him back in, honestly kind of enabling him a little bit.
Totally. He totally yelled at his wife and was disrespectful and all that, and he knocked on the door however much longer later, and he's like, Llewyn, come in, and they're apologizing to him. It's just like, all right, maybe you should give him a bit more tough love, but
I think he needs more Carey Mulligans in his life.
Yeah.
And she does a really good job. Like it's so funny seeing Justin Timberlake. It's still weird to me seeing Justin Timberlake pop up in movies, but obviously it fits really well here because he's supposed to be a musician. Adam Driver, watching this in 2021 with what I know about Adam Driver now and all the things that he's done, and literally he's just in here is like, whoa, and just being like, whoop, whoop, and just doing all these like, it's so silly. And like John Goodman, we talked about, and F. Murray Abraham is like every Coen Brothers film has a great cast, and even the not named actors like his agent and his agent's wife
Yeah.
are hilarious.
Like the did you bring me the Cincinnati thing? What did you want me to bring it? Can you bring it for me? It's just like that was so Cohen's right there.
Yes.
That one I completely forgot about that. And it was like there's the perfect dry humor.
I had the same exact thought. I put in my notes, I'm like the most Coen Brothers dialogue back and forth between them. That's where they excel, is like the weird, dry, awkward kind of conversations. But I guess, Robert, do you have any other final thoughts about Inside Llewyn Davis?
Yeah, this is a small thing, but I do want to mention for years I watched The Social Network and was like, man, is Justin Timberlake a good actor? Because he really annoys me in this movie. And then it clicked one of my recent watches of The Social Network where I was like, he's supposed to be annoying and he's good at being annoying. And then I watched like In Time isn't a great movie, but I think he's good for what it is.
Yeah.
And then in this one, in Llewyn Davis, this is where I'm really like, yeah, Justin Timberlake, he is a solid actor. Maybe he's not the best, he's not top tier or anything, but he's serviceable and he plays the roles. And it always just hammers home for me when he does something other than The Social Network, which I've seen too many times to like kind of skew my opinion on him. So I'm glad to just have a solid opinion. Like, yeah, Justin Timberlake's good, and I'm glad that he was given just a role as a good, friendly guy who's good at music in this one.
Yeah, because I know he popped up in Palmer on which came out on Apple TV Plus this year, and I thought he did a really fine job. I didn't take him seriously too much when he got like really angry and like, do I believe Justin Timberlake is somebody who spent a bunch of years in prison kind of thing? Not quite, but like most of the role I appreciated him in it. But this was, I hope that the tragedy of Macbeth changes this, but as of right now, Inside Llewyn Davis is still that like last great Coen Brothers movie before they had Hail Caesar and Buster Scruggs that are mixed bags kinds of films. And honestly, I kind of wish they just made Buster Scruggs the mini series it was supposed to be. But it was I think that was originally why they went to Netflix. It was supposed to be a series, and they're like, you know what? Let's just have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
Like,
I saw it the one time. I thought it was fine, but I wasn't really all that interested in it.
There's pieces that I love, and other ones I'm just like, what did I watch? Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. It all kind of balances out somewhere in the middle. But now shifting gears into our last segment here, which is our Q&A section. So the question I came up with, because Robert has been participating along with a lot more people than I anticipated of people voting on, which is I've been doing Instagram stories of a tournament on directors. And the reason for that is I'm almost done the Coen Brothers. So I'm like, who am I going to do next? Yeah. I thought I was going to go just straight up right into Christopher Nolan because he's my second favorite director. But I'm like, I wanted to do something that kind of like integrate my followers and stuff like that to see, like, get input from people, which down to the final six, you go Mel Brooks. I did not expect Mel Brooks to still be in there at this point. And he beat Denis Villeneuve.
Wow.
Which was so weird. I could turn around and look at my Mel Brooks collection up in my movies. I'm like, I love Mel Brooks. Did not expect him to beat Denis Villeneuve. Mm-hmm. But so I've been thinking about directors a lot. And my list has been a variety. That list of directors I was coming up with is a variety of, like, you have the Scorseses who've literally been doing this for forever. And like, I would be watching Scorsese movies for like 3/4 of a year going through his filmography. But there was others on that list where I'm like, I love them. They only have like 1 or 2 films. So my question that I wanted to bring up, Robert, is who are some of your favorite directors that are kind of like in the infancy of their careers with like 1 or 2 films under their belts?
All right, so that's going to make me think. The first one that comes to mind is Alex Garland with Ex Machina. And Annihilation. I don't think he's directed any other movies, but I loved Devs, which was on Hulu. I think me and you have maybe talked about this before, but I love Devs and I love Ex Machina, and Annihilation's another one I need to check out again.
There's rumors that he ghost directed Dread.
Really? He wrote it?
Yes.
Who directed Dread?
I don't remember. Which the thing is, it wouldn't surprise me. It's one of those situations where it's like there's rumors that the Wachowskis ghost directed V for Vendetta. There's rumors that Steven Spielberg ghost directed Poltergeist. Oh. And like a lot of them, I'm like, I could see it, but I wasn't there, so I'm not going to confirm or deny any of those things. But like Alex Garland is one of my favorites too. Ex Machina and Annihilation are two of my favorite films of the past decade.
Oh yeah, 100%. Then there's also, I would say, Damien Chazelle with La La Land and Whiplash. He has one other one that I haven't seen though.
First Man.
First Man. There I have seen First Man, but I think there was one before that. It's like a smaller, even indier than Whiplash that I haven't seen. But yeah, I like Damien Chazelle a lot.
Mm-hmm. Which I think La La Land was my number 3 film of 2016. It was either 3 or 4. It was behind Silence and Hell or High Water. I am a huge Taylor Sheridan fan, so
fit for this.
Yeah, and I know David Mackenzie directed Hell or High Water, which I really like him as a director too. But La La Land was definitely up there, and like Whiplash, J.K. Simmons, man. J.K. Simmons is terrifying. Like, terrifying. And I need to watch First Man again. I watched it, I'm like, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was great, but like, I want to watch it again to see how, like, because it's very different. Like, it's a different energy level than Whiplash, because like, Whiplash is tense as hell. And La La Land obviously has so much vibrant energy about it. But Damien Chazelle is certainly like the prototypical director on the rise kind of position right now.
My last one that comes to mind, and I don't know if this really counts, but it's Martin McDonagh. He's only directed 3 movies, but he's in his 50s, I think. So I don't know if it's really like in its infancy. And he directed In Bruges in like 2009.
So I was legitimately thinking about the number, so we're going with it.
Oh, yeah,
that works.
Like the number of films they've directed.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's 3 with In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, and 3 Billboards. In Bruges is one of my favorite movies of all time. That's gonna be one of my YouTube videos coming up, actually, talking about.
I'll be watching.
Thank you.
I love that movie.
Me too. It is so good. As is 7 Psychopaths, and I need to watch 3 Billboards again. But I know that I loved the first 2, and I know that I had a strong positive reaction to 3 Billboards. But I just need to get to that one again.
Mm-hmm. In Bruges changed my whole entire perspective on Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
because I hated him.
Really?
Like up to that point, I'm like, I am not a fan of this guy. Daredevil, Alexander. I'm just like, no. And then I watched In Bruges. I'm like, where's this guy been? And now I'm a huge fan of his. Please don't make any more Artemis Fowls and stuff like that.
I feel like some guys like him need to get big movies. Just get a paycheck and then go back to making their smaller ones.
Mm-hmm. With Colin Farrell, like even in The Gentleman as coach, love every second of it. But Martin McDonagh is great, and he feels like a cousin to the Coen brothers. Like I feel like I watch his movies, I'm like, especially 3 Billboards, I'm like, did the Coens make this? Yeah. Which is interesting because Carter Burwell does the scores for his movies too, and I'm like,
Francis McDormand's the star.
Yeah, so might as well have been a Coen Brothers movie. But I love Martin McDonagh. Some of the ones that came to mind, like I am so excited to see what Jordan Peele comes out with next, and like it's funny because all three of mine are going to be horror directors at this point, which is weird because like it's not my favorite genre, but these three make me excited to watch future horror films. And I know I'm going to have some different feelings than some of our SiftPop writers, especially Aaron, because I've had this conversation with him about The Lighthouse.
I do like Eggers a lot.
Yes. And The Northman, I'm excited. But like The Witch, I remember watching that for the first time. I'm like, what effed up brain came up with this movie? Yep. And then The Lighthouse is one of the most technically impressive films I've watched in so long. Made me want to listen to sea shanties. Mm-hmm. And also, which is funny, I sat in the front row because it was sold out on a Friday night when I went to go see The Lighthouse. And I'm like, what? I was in the front row just watching the two of, like, I'm like, are they going to kill each other? Are they going to, like, express their feelings in other ways? I don't know where this is going, but it was it's like poetry in film form, which the thing is, I understand certain people aren't the hugest fan of like more artistic, like abstract kind of filmmaking, but like, which if you're not, then don't watch The Lighthouse. You're going to be so frustrated. But like, Robert Eggers is so talented in how he creates things, and they feel so authentic. Like The Witch feels so authentic. Mm-hmm. It's like they don't understand half the things that they're saying.
I watched it with subtitles.
Yeah. And then Ari Aster was the other one. That was going to be the last. Because like how I describe Hereditary is it is a human drama that will rip your heart out for 2 acts. And then when you're so emotionally devastated, then it's like, you thought this was done, didn't you? And then it turns into a horror movie. And then you're like, I can't defend myself anymore. And you're just like, one of my favorite moments ever sitting and watching a movie in a theater. I was with my ex my girlfriend at the time, sitting there watching this in the theater. I'm like, when that perfectly frame of Nat Wolff in his bed. And I'm like, is there something in the top left corner of the frame? I'm like staring at it. I'm like, something looks off up there. And then they cut to like the high angle and you just see her flying through them. like, what is going on here? And then it just goes crazy from there. Oh my God, that movie. A24 knows how to find some ambitious filmmakers, I have to say. And then Blumhouse too. It's like A24 is for that like high artistic atmospheric horror, and Blumhouse is for like, did you love 80s horror movies, 90s horror movies, that pulpy kind of thing? Well, we got all of them for you. And so like, it makes me happy that there's studios like that could put out those different kinds of perspectives on things.
Let me ask you, are you a fan of Midsommar?
Yes.
Okay, good. I loved that. Like, you were talking about the first 2/3 of Hereditary, and I like the first 2/3, and it loses me in the third, just because it goes too crazy. And when a horror movie goes too crazy, it's not like scary to me anymore. It's just like, what is going on? But Midsommar keeps it up the entire time from beginning to end.
I'll have to say,
absolutely love it.
Midsommar is a much more consistent feel to it the whole entire film, because Hereditary has that, like, it makes you question, is this really a horror movie? And then it pulls that rug out from under you, like, yes it is. Are you ready? And the opening scene of Midsommar is one of the most emotionally devastating things I think I've ever watched in a movie.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
And then the whole rest of that movie is a crazy as fever dream. Like that, between that and The Lighthouse, I'm like, what were people smoking when they were
summer too?
Yeah, when they made these movies that year, because it's next level kind of craziness. It makes me excited that there's that creative force, and David Lowery's another one. He has more films, and he has such a strange variety of movies, because like he has the Peach Dragon remake, which I love. And now he has The Green Knight coming out, and I'm so excited.
He did a Ghost Story, right?
Yes, which is one of the strangest movies I think I've ever watched.
Yeah. I think it's the only one I've seen from him, but I'm excited for Green Knight too.
I remember when that trailer came out last year, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what is this? And you have my money now.
Yes.
And then the new trailer came out. I'm like, now I know more about what this is. I want to see this even quicker now. Give me this movie. So I will be seeing that in July when it's in theaters because I want to watch that on a big screen.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your contribution on this question because I think it's fun talking about people to be excited about with some of their films coming out. And all the directors that we talked about obviously are somewhere working on some kind of movie right now. And I'm trying to think of, like, I know Robert Eggers' next film because there's a bunch of stuff coming out about the Northman that's been like cast and stuff like that. Nicole Kidman, I think Alexander Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is a muse of his, I guess, because like he is so nuts in The Lighthouse.
Surprised he didn't get a nomination.
That upset me that he didn't.
Yeah.
But I would argue out of all the acting categories, best supporting actors like the hardest one every year to pick out 5 people because honestly, there's more interesting roles out there for men. I think it just naturally turns out that way. And then the supporting roles is like there's so many juicy, weird characters, fun characters, interesting characters for like veteran actors, young actors to just like sink their teeth into.
Yeah.
And I'm always excited to see what pops up there. But Robert, I really appreciate you coming onto the show this week. And Robert has a promise that if Nolan or Ridley Scott won this, he's definitely coming on and gets first pick on whatever. And at this rate, Nolan's still going strong. He's having a hard battle against Hitchcock, I think it is.
Those are 2 giants.
And then Scorsese's going head to head with Mel Brooks, which is surprisingly close. And then it's Kubrick versus John Carpenter, which is very interesting. But we'll find out. And I'm sure Robert will be back on the show. And I'll definitely be checking out your YouTube channel when that starts up. I'm excited.
Should be very soon.
I'll be keeping an eye out. And all of you should too. But Robert, thank you for joining. And thank all of you out there for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.